Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about some of the best world building questions that I've come across that have helped me get unstuck, that have helped me build the foundation of my world before I started writing. So these are just a handful of questions that I put together over the last couple of years that I think will really help you get your ideas flowing and help you build your world. If you're new here, I'm Marita. I'm an aspiring fantasy author who's currently working on a novel that is loosely based on Mulan. I also have a degree in English literature, which hopefully means that I know a little bit of what I'm talking about. I spend years and years analyzing hundreds of novels, not to mention spending the last couple of years building my own world, building my own characters, plotting, writing, all of this fun stuff. Before we get into it, I also just want to mention that this video is based on a blog post that I have on my website. That blog post is more in depth, has way more questions. I think it has 165 questions in there. Obviously, I'm not going to cover all of that in this video because it is too much, but I do recommend that you go and read that after watching this video if you want more questions to ponder before writing your novel. Okay. So we're going to start off with some core foundational questions. So the first one is, what is the central theme or tone of your story? So are you going for grimdark? Are you going for high fantasy? Are you going for cozy fantasy? Are you going for epic fantasy? Are you going for romantasy? Obviously, that is the foundation of your story. You should have that figured out. The next question is, what is the scope of your world? Is everything happening in one city? Is everything happening in one house? Or are there multiple countries that you need to build? Is there a whole planet that you need to build? So you need to figure out the scope of your world, how big or how small it's gonna be. After that, what is something that makes your world unique? What is one thing that sets your world apart from other fantasy settings out there? It could be maybe the magic system of your world that is completely unique from anything else and that shapes the overarching world. It could be anything really, just something that is unique to your world and that can't be applied to literally any other fantasy world. And then I think the last foundational question is there going to be magic in your world? And if so, is it rare? Is it common? Is it scientific? Is it random? Is it innate? And just FYI, later on, there's going to be an entire category to itself for magic systems because it's one of my favorite topics when it comes to world building and fantasy writing. So be aware of that. Okay, let us jump into the geography and environment category. One of the most basic questions that you need to ask yourself about the geography is, what does the terrain or landscape look like? Is it a mountainous region? Is it a forest? Is it like islands surrounded by ocean? Is it a desert? Have that terrain figured out before you start writing because it is going to affect everything else. It's going to affect the culture and society. It's going to affect your characters. It's going to affect trade. It's going to affect class systems. It's going to affect the climate, of course. And speaking of climate, that's another major question you need to ask yourself. So depending on the terrain, so let's say you've decided that it's a desert. So if it's a desert, the climate, it's arid, it's hot as hell, right? What can we derive from that? We can derive that it's not easy to grow food, right? So they'll probably have to import food. And if they import food, what are they exporting for that? That also brings about the type of relationship that that country has with neighboring countries. We know that there could be drought, right? Obviously. So water scarcity, food scarcity, these are things that would majorly affect the society that you're building. There's probably people who are super rich who can afford all of these imports. And then there's people who are super poor who cannot afford imports. And how do those people behave? And that also affects crime, right? In a place where there's food scarcity and water scarcity, there's bound to be desperation and crime and all this stuff. So going back to the original question, terrain and climate, figure those things out because they will affect everything else. Let's move on to history and lore. Unless the world that you're building is basically like a day one baby world and there's nothing else before it, and I don't think I've ever read a novel like that, but unless that is your intention, where there is no history and people are starting from scratch, okay, fine, then you can probably skip this. But for 99.9% of the rest of you who are building a world with a history, some of the most basic questions that you can ask to get your ideas flowing is, what are some of the major events that have shaped your current world? So major events can be like a major war that happened, or it could be a natural disaster like an earthquake or an asteroid or something, that happened. It could be like a magical calamity. So yeah, have a little bit of that history figured out, because the history of your world is most definitely going to affect the current state of your world. And if we dig a little bit deeper, you can also start asking yourself questions if there are any legends or myths or prophecies that have shaped your current world. So actually, a book that I'm reading right now, and if you want to read it, it's really good. It's called The Raven Scholar by Antonia Hodgson. And in this book, myth plays a huge role in how society works. So there's like a myth about these 8 mythical creatures, and there's like superstition around them. And I mean, obviously I don't want to give much away, but basically the way people speak, some of the rituals that they have and the expressions that they use, they're all tied to this myth. So if there's going to be some kind of myth in your world, you want to have that figured out, because it will affect your current world. Okay, the next category is society and culture. And this is a really broad category, so I'm just going to narrow it down to a few fundamental questions that you want to ask before you get started. So in terms of society and culture, you want to have figured out, first of all, if there are different races and species in your society, and if so, how do those different races and species interact with one another? Is there conflict between them? Do they coexist without issues? Are relationships between different races or different species frowned upon or forbidden, or, whatever it is? Have that figured out. Those are foundational things for your world. Also, if you're going to have different languages in your story, maybe start thinking about those as well. So if there's different languages, maybe you're not building like an entirely new language, but there could be different expressions or insults or slang words used based on where the characters come from. In my own story, there are 2 major countries, and you can tell that, obviously the entire book is written in English, but you can tell that they come from different places because they use different expressions and they use different swear words. So if you're gonna have languages, ask yourself, okay, first of all, how many languages are there? And that ties back to what the scope of your world is, how many countries that you have. And you can start thinking about the fact that they should probably have, different expressions and stuff for different things. Again, these are just basic questions. If you want the full list of questions, go to the blog. There are a ton more questions in there for a deeper dive, but these are just foundational questions that you need to be asking yourself before you start writing, just so you understand your own world a little bit better. Okay, the next section is my favorite section. I always mention this in my videos. One of my favorite things is magic systems. If you don't have a magic system in your fantasy novel, that's completely fine. So you can just skip over these questions. But if you do, top question to ask, first of all, how is magic used? Is it innate? Is it learned? Is it only reserved for the royals? Who can use the magic in your world? So that first and foremost. Second, what are the costs and limitations of your magic system? Okay, because a magic system should always have costs and limits. Because if it doesn't, if it's limitless, then what stops it from solving literally any problem in your world? So you really want to think about what overuse looks like, what the consequences looks like, and what the limits are of your magic system. And also ask yourself, what is the source of the magic? Where does the magic come from? Does it come from some kind of raw material? Does it come from an artifact? Is it elemental? Do you just pull it from fire or water or air or whatever it is? Figure out what the source of your magic system is. And I'm going to stop there for the magic system questions, just because I can go on forever when it comes to this section. But I will mention that if you want to dig deeper, like I said, you can go back to the blog post that's in the description below, and it has a bunch of magic system questions in there. But I also have I have 2 videos actually. One of them is the most common magic system mistakes to avoid, and the other one is how to build a magic system from scratch. So I will link both of those videos in the description below if you're interested in watching that. So before I move on to politics and power, by now you're understanding that there's obviously a lot of work to be done when world building. There are all these different components that you need to think about, like the geography and politics and characters and society and religion and all this stuff. And if you're anything like me, You probably have a Google Doc somewhere with all of these different categories all over the place, and that is how I used to do things as well until I started losing track of everything. And then I started creating my own fantasy templates so I can keep everything organized. And if you've seen any of my previous videos, or if you've already been on my website, you'll see that I sell really custom and specific templates for all of these things. But I am happy to announce that I have actually created a fantasy world building and story planning app from scratch. And it is custom built for fantasy writers. It has its own categories and wikis for everything that you can possibly need. It has its own spot for locations in your world, for all the characters in your world, for the culture, for races, for species, for languages. It has its own map maker built in. It has a timeline feature. It has relationship webs. Everything is interconnected. So if you're interested in that, I will have my app linked in the description below, and it comes with a free trial so you can test it out. You can see if it's a right fit for you. And yeah, you can put all of this information in there. The paid version also has all of these world building questions built in, so it guides you through everything. So anyway, I will leave it at that. So where were we? Politics and power. Okay, one of the most important questions, again, I'm saying that for each category, but a foundational question to ask yourself when it comes to politics is, what system does your world run on? So is it a monarchy? Is it a democracy? Is it a theocracy? Is it anarchy? Whatever it is, you need to have that figured out, because that is how you'll know who holds power in your world. And that is something that is so important because it affects everything else. Whoever is in power, whoever is in charge, or it doesn't need to be one person. It can obviously be like a body of people, but whoever is in charge dictates how your society runs, how your world runs, right? And when you figure out who holds power, also ask yourself, how did they get it? So was it passed down to them through generations, like through bloodlines? Was that person voted in? Did they usurp the throne? Was there a war? Was there a betrayal? Because if there was a war or a betrayal, or, the throne was usurped or whatever, you have built-in tension, okay? You don't need a brand new conflict. There's going to be a lot of people in that society who are already pissed off about the situation. There are people who have not forgotten what has happened. There are people who want to tear down the power system. So yeah, you should think long and hard about who's in power and why they're in power. And now for the final set of foundational questions that I want to cover, it's religion and belief systems. And I want to cover this because religion plays a huge role in my own story, and it affects so many other aspects of the world. So essentially, the country that my story starts in, it's a theocracy. So obviously, religion has a major role. Those in power are religious figures. So if religion is going to play a role in your story, some of the foundational questions you need to ask is, what do they believe in? Is there one god or goddess? Is there a pantheon of gods? Is it like an abstract force that they believe in? Like what does the belief system look like? And if you have multiple countries, it could very well be that there are different religions throughout. But for the sake of this exercise, let's only think about the religion and belief system of maybe where your story is starting off, so that you can have that covered for Act 1. And so if there are goddesses in your world, are they distant and unknowable? Or do they walk among mortals? Or could they ever come back to Earth? Do they still hold like real power over people? Maybe they're connected to the magic system, right? Maybe your magic system revolves around divine power. And another really interesting question that I had asked myself when I was building my religion is, what happens after death in your world? Do the people think that they can either ascend to somewhere like heaven or descend into somewhere like hell? Or what do they think the afterlife looks like for them? So this is like a really thought-provoking question that you can ask yourself when you're building a religion. And the last question that I want to include for religions is, are there any religious prophecies that have to be fulfilled? Because if so, this is like a big plot hook, and you should really think about this before you start writing. Okay, so those are the foundational world building questions that I will leave you with. Again, if you go to my blog post, which is linked in the description below, you will find, I think there's 160 or maybe 165 questions in there that you can go through. Obviously, you do not have to answer all of these questions. These are just questions that will get you thinking, that will help you build your world. If any of them don't make sense, like if you don't have a magic system, if you don't have a religion, or they don't play a major role in your story, don't get stuck on them. You can skip over them. These are just questions that are really thought-provoking, that really helped me shape the world that I built for my own novel. And I will mention again that I have built a world building and story planning app that covers all of these categories. It also comes in with built-in prompts for world building and magic system building. It has categories for cultures, societies, religions, languages, characters, species, races, creatures, everything, and everything's interconnected. Again, there's a free trial that you can sign up for. So the link to my Quill&Steel Worldbuilding app will be in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to my channel. I create videos like this pretty regularly. I cover world building, character building, plotting, magic system building, my favorite topic. I also cover romantasy writing, all of that fun stuff. Also, if there are other questions that I haven't covered that you think are really interesting, that will help other fantasy writers during their world building process, please drop them in the comments below. Generally, I read and respond to each and every one of those. Okay, thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I will see you next time. Bye.